The Kenobi series reframed Darth Vader not as an abstract symbol of darkness, but as a physical embodiment of sustained violence. This version of Vader operated with a level of aggression absent from earlier portrayals, emphasizing the raw brutality underlying the armor. His actions were not the efficient eliminations of a political enforcer, they were deliberate acts of cruelty designed to demonstrate dominance. The series presented him as a figure who inflicted pain not for strategy, but for psychological assertion. Vader's behavior in public spaces revealed a pattern of targeted intimidation. He did not simply eliminate obstacles, he created fear by dragging civilians, crushing bones, and forcing witnesses to watch. These moments served a narrative purpose by illustrating the kind of Sith Lord who no longer required rhetoric or ideology to terrify a community. His cruelty functioned as communication. Every violent display existed to announce the presence of a figure fueled by unresolved history rather than imperial duty. The portrayal highlighted that his rage was tied to a single objective. Vader's actions consistently pointed toward Obi-Wan as the focal point of his aggression. He did not chase political dissidents, military threats, or strategic targets. He pursued one individual with more intensity than he devoted to the rebellion. This fixation reshaped his image. He was not a ruler maintaining order, but a wounded combatant searching for emotional resolution through violence. The series emphasized that Vader's brutality was personal, rather than tactical. His attempts to burn Obi-Wan mirrored the injuries he suffered on Mustafar, demonstrating that he interpreted conflict through memory rather than logic. These parallels revealed a character whose violence was symbolic reenactment rather than pragmatic execution. Vader used cruelty as a method of reliving and rewriting the past, reflecting a mind trapped in unresolved catastrophe. His confrontation tactics demonstrated emotional volatility beneath the mechanical exterior. He alternated between calculated restraint and explosive aggression, indicating that rage, not discipline, dictated his movements. This instability positioned him closer to the impulsive warrior Anakin Skywalker once was. The armor masked vulnerability, but the behavior exposed a fractured psyche, attempting to validate itself through domination. The narrative reframed Vader as someone who remembered pain more vividly than purpose. His flashpoint moments were reenactments of his own trauma projected outward. The cruelty directed at random villagers signified displacement. The acts were intended for Kenobi, but inflicted on anyone within reach. This demonstrated that he lacked the emotional stability to differentiate targets. Everything became a proxy for unresolved resentment. By presenting cruelty as a coping mechanism, the series highlighted that Vader's identity depended on aggression. Violence functioned as the structure that held his persona together. Without constant displays of strength, the underlying instability threatened to surface. This interpretation positioned Vader's brutality not as a sign of confidence, but as a reinforcement mechanism he relied on to suppress any remnants of Anakin. The show reframed Vader's pursuit as a ritual of denial. His insistence on proving superiority over Obi-Wan indicated that he viewed the conflict as a test of identity. If he could break Kenobi, he could justify the annihilation of his former self. Each cruel act became an attempt to replace memory with dominance. The brutality was not external performance. It was an internal argument expressed through violence. Vader's behavior exposed that his relationship to power was rooted in insecurity. His cruelty did not reflect mastery of the dark side, but dependence on it. The more he leaned into destruction, the more he needed it to maintain emotional coherence. The series illustrated that his violence provided temporary relief from internal conflict, creating a cycle where cruelty produced stability that immediately deteriorated. The depiction of Vader dragging Obi-Wan through fire symbolized his reliance on reenactment to reinforce identity. He attempted to recreate the defining moment of Anakin's downfall, not to defeat a rival, but to relive an event that validated his existence as Vader. The act served as affirmation that he had severed ties with his past, even though the need to reenact it suggested the opposite. The show's depiction revealed that Vader's brutality increased when faced with reminders of who he once was. His intensity escalated whenever Kenobi appeared, indicating that the presence of his former master destabilized the identity he tried to maintain. Violence became a shield against the discomfort of recognition. Instead of confronting memory, he attempted to destroy the source of it. The narrative demonstrated that cruelty represented the only framework Vader trusted. Political authority, institutional power, and Sith philosophy functioned as secondary motivators. His primary driver was emotional displacement. He relied on brutality because it allowed him to silence internal conflict. The more he destroyed, the less he had to reconcile the contradictions between Anakin and Vader. The series stripped away mythic detachment and revealed Vader as a figure defined by obsession. His cruelty illustrated a dependency on rage rather than an expression of dominance. By portraying him as someone who attacked others not for tactical advantage, but for psychological preservation, Kenobi reframed Vader's darkness as an unstable construct rather than an unshakable identity. His brutality became evidence of a man clinging to anger because he had nothing else left. Kenobi recontextualized Vader's intimidation by revealing that his power framework was built on emotional dependence. Despite his destructive capability, he exhibited an inability to detach from the past. His obsession with Obi-Wan revealed a structural weakness. His identity required constant reinforcement through confrontation. Rather than functioning as an autonomous Sith Lord, he remained psychologically tethered to a single, unresolved relationship. The series emphasized that Vader's strength was inseparable from vulnerability. His armor, often perceived as a symbol of invincibility, was depicted as a restrictive mechanism that kept him alive rather than empowered. Every movement conveyed physical limitation, and every breath reinforced dependency on machinery. The imagery suggested that his existence was less a triumph of dark side transformation, and more a perpetual reminder of failure. Vader's pursuit of Obi-Wan demonstrated a pattern of emotional fixation inconsistent with Sith discipline. Instead of focusing on broader goals or strategic objectives, he funneled disproportionate attention toward one individual. This imbalance underscored the fragility of his psychological state. His inability to redirect focus revealed a character driven by unresolved attachment rather than Sith ideology. In the final confrontation, Vader's emotional instability overshadowed his combat ability. His intensity did not translate into advantage. Obi-Wan's composure contrasted sharply with Vader's reactive movements, illustrating the difference between a character who had processed the past and one who remained consumed by it. Vader fought to validate an identity. Obi-Wan fought to end a cycle. The helmet break scene served as a structural pivot in the portrayal of Vader. When the mask fractured, the narrative exposed not only Anakin's face but also the underlying truth. Vader's persona was an attempt to silence internal conflict, not a reflection of dominance. His declaration that he killed Anakin was not triumph but rationalization. He needed the statement to maintain the illusion of separation. Kenobi's apology destabilized Vader precisely because it removed the conflict he relied on. Obi-Wan acknowledged the tragedy without hostility, depriving Vader of the emotional resistance required to sustain hatred. This moment revealed that his strength depended on external opposition. Without someone to resist, his anger lacked direction, making him vulnerable to collapse. Vader's inability to move on demonstrated his stalled development. While Obi-Wan grew beyond guilt, Vader remained bound to the moment of betrayal on Mustafar. His emotional landscape had not expanded since that day. The armor preserved his body, but it also preserved his trauma. The show emphasized that he existed in suspended psychological animation. The narrative illustrated that Vader's power functioned as compensation rather than fulfillment. He accumulated strength to mask the absence of identity. His destructive tendencies were attempts to validate an existence built on denial. The more he sought control, the more his motivations revealed dependency on unresolved feelings toward Obi-Wan. Vader's loss in the final duel did not stem from inferior ability, but from structural imbalance. Obi-Wan approached the fight from clarity. Vader approached it from fixation. The more he pursued emotional closure, the more predictable his movements became. His combat style reflected a mind trapped in repetition rather than innovation. The series positioned Vader as a figure incapable of emotional flexibility. His rage allowed no pathways for reconciliation or redefinition. He relied on a single narrative of betrayal to justify every action. Without that narrative, his identity lacked coherence. This rigidity made him powerful in battle, but weak in understanding, creating a character defined by imbalance. Vader's silence as Obi-Wan walked away represented more than defeat. It revealed recognition that he could not force closure through violence. His scream was not directed at Obi-Wan, but at the void left behind. Without an immediate target to project onto, he confronted the absence he had been avoiding. The scene suggested that his greatest fear was not losing to Obi-Wan, but existing without him. The show illustrated that Vader's loyalty to the dark side was not philosophical conviction, but dependence. The dark side offered structure for his pain, not liberation from it. His commitment stemmed from the inability to imagine a self outside of rage. This framework turned him into a participant of the dark side rather than a master of it. By the end of the series, Vader remained unchanged because he could not adapt. His strength had boundaries created by emotional entrapment. He relied on anger the way his lungs relied on machinery. Kenobi exposed that the persona of Vader was not an evolution of Anakin, but an avoidance of him. His weakness lay not in physical limitation, but in psychological immobility. Kenobi ultimately framed Vader as a character whose greatest flaw was the inability to let go. His cruelty functioned as structure, and his obsession functioned as identity. The series revealed that beneath the armor of a Sith, Lord remained a man defined by a single failure. Vader's weakness wasn't lack of power, but lack of release. He could destroy armies, but he could not escape himself.
Thank you for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that share button. My main channel is Critical Analysis Hub, where I post Star Wars content about the movies. My secondary channel is Critical Analysis Hub Plus, where I focus on the shows of Star Wars. And my third channel is Critical Analysis Hub XP, where I post comic books. Be sure to take a moment and check them out. Thanks, and may the Force be with you.